Hello everyone and welcome back to Affinity for Commander. My name is Alex and today we're going to be looking at one of the new Dimir legends from D&D The Forgotten Realms, Xanathar. But just before we get into having a look at this card, oh there's a joke in there somewhere, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our amazing patrons, without whom content like this would not be possible. So thank you so much for continuing to support the channel. And as always, if you like any of the cards that you see in this video, then be sure to check out our links in the description box below for these lovely sponsors. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and it really helps the channel out a lot. And if you want to bling out your favourite commanders or legends within your deck, then be sure to check out altersleeves.com and peruse their expansive library of amazing artwork. Again, make sure you use the description box link below. For now though, on to our Crime Lord. Xanathar Guild Kingpin is a 5/6 legendary creature beholder for 4 generic, 1 blue and 1 black mana. He reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. Until the end of turn, that player can't cast spells. You may look at the top card of their library any time. You may play the top card of their library, and you may spend mana as though a mana of any colour to cast spells this way. So on the surface, Xanathar seems to be a commander looking to steal our opponent's stuff. So far, so send triplets. However, I would say our beholder differs from the triplets in a few important ways. Firstly, you're going through your opponent's libraries rather than hand, and your opponents can't cast spells in response to this. Well, the opponent you're targeting, but that's going to be the opponent that matters. Xanathar also allows for much more explosive plays. True, you might get 3 lands in a row from your opponent's library, or you might ram perfectly into their Craterhoof on turn 6. Both are equally likely. Some cards to help out with this are Paradoxical Haze and Strionic Resonator. After all, why target only one opponent when we can have 2 players and the potential of multiple cards a turn, or even the choice of lands to play? We can also compound this by making non-legendary copies of the Kingpin with Sakashima of 1,000 Faces or Spark Double. Now, I'm personally not usually a fan of these types of effects because essentially you are just begging for someone to kill your commander in response to this, but if it works, it will be so beautiful. Speaking of things I'm not normally a fan of, Scheming Symmetry is a card that I would normally not touch with a 10-foot long pole. And because it lets your opponents also shoot it for a card. Not something I'm normally okay with. However, given the idea of now we can politic our way out of a lot of different situations, this card with Xanathar becomes really good. You can now start making deals with people to say, look, I'm going to cast this huge shooter up, a kill spell, so that I can Xanathar it out and kill that Blightsteel Colossus over there that's threatening the table. Or you can simply say nothing and watch your opponents drip with sweat as they decide what cards to put on top, knowing you might mill it or just plain steal it away. Again, a card I don't normally like, but becomes quite funny with our commander's unique ability. However, given Xanathar's ability, there is quite a large amount of variance there. So let's try and limit that variance with our bit of spot mill. As despite Xanathar's ability being quite powerful, if we're just staring at a chunk of land on the top of our opponent's library, he's essentially a not really great 6-drop. So being able to manipulate the top card of our opponent's library with some spot mill means we get to churn through the top card until we get to the good stuff. Now the first point I want to make with our main strategy is that we don't want really massive mill cards like Fraying Sanity or even Traumatize. No, we're looking for little instances of mill to churn through the top card of our opponent's library. So we're going to be running cards like Codex Shredder, Ashiok Dream Render, Cathartic Adept, Grind Clock, Pixis of Pandemonium, and Sands of Delirium. Again, the important thing about these cards is that when their abilities are activated, we essentially get a new card to use from our chosen opponent's library, which we can now hopefully play and chain into a few more. And it would of course be deeply remiss of me not to mention Lantern of Insight. Now we get to see all the top cards of our opponent's library, choose the opportune moment to play our commander, and if we don't like what we see, we can simply tap the artifact and shuffle away any problematic cards or things we just can't cast at the moment. And the last but the cutest little version of this type of effect is Scrib Nibblers. A card that is able to do this multiple times, giving its landfall untapping effect, and it even exiles the card if we really don't want it ever coming back, especially if we're against a Merrin or Muldrotha player, for example. However, should our Beholder be holding no longer, then we're going to have an additional win con apart from our tiny instances of mill. So, as our dear Kingpin would want, let's just steal everything. Blatant Thievery, Memory, Plunder, Praetor's Grasp, Mind's Dilation, a personal favourite of mine, Gonti, Lord of Luxury, Demir Doppelganger, and both Sepulchre and Diluvian Primordial, who work especially nicely with our mill strategy. And finally, Lazav Demir Mastermind is a fantastic way to make the use of our instances of mill and potentially be able to get a huge bomb onto our side of the field. And since we are definitely on the path of milling our opponent's best creatures or just casting them ourselves, why not cards like Animate Dead and Reanimate to get back those huge win con creatures for our own with very, very cheap mana costs. Now, normally this is the part of the video where I will start recommending cards for some ramp and removal, a bit of R&R if you will. But we're in Dimir, and you don't need me to tell you to go for the Throat or Cast Down or Toxic Deluge are good cards. You know that. You're clever people. Apart from maybe do run the Deluge. That is a very good card, especially given how thick our commander is. And you also don't need me to tell you that being in Dimir, our ramp options are also limited. So we're going to be heavily relying on the Signets, the Talismans, and the Stones. However, there are some cards I do definitely recommend and would 100% put in this deck, although they're definitely not staples for Dimir colours. Cards like Dark Ritual, High Tide, and Bubbling Muck definitely have a place here. I know a lot of people tend to have these anyway, but I'm always wary of cards that just produce mana when you might not have anything else to do with them. But being able to get Xanathar out a turn or two earlier is not only scary given his stats, but it also means you get to sit back with your hand down and just work through your opponent's libraries, grabbing those lands you might need, and having more mana to cast more of their spells. But with the cards of High Tide and Bubbling Muck, just make sure you pick the opportune moment, as there's nothing worse than casting one, having your commander removed, and then just sat there with a billion mana and nowhere to go. And of course we're in black, so Cryptghast will definitely need to make an appearance. Again, we need a billion mana, our options are limited, and Cryptghast is just, well, it's just a damn good card, there's not much to say else about him. He doubles mana, what more do you want? Speaking of what we want, we still need some special lands. Hopefully ones that will also be now helping our mill strategy keep going, should some be very rude and Vandal blast away all of our artifacts. Duskmantle, House of Dead, and Nephilia Drownyard are good for getting through our opponent's terrible top cards for the good stuff. And Emergence Zone, in my opinion, is a horrifically underplayed card, and allows us to flash in our commander in our opponent's end step, and then use his ability straight away, and not have to wait for that painful turn cycle, praying to Urza no one decides to kill our beloved Beholder. And now with all this being said, there are some obvious upgrades that can be made to this list. Cards like Cabal Coffers and Urvorg spring immediately to mind because, again, we need a billion mana. And if we're looking to really get into stealing things, then Expropriate is still the king of this type of effect. Yes, okay, I just realized the card as well, okay? Sue me. Now, as mentioned, we need Xanathar out as much as possible, so being able to flash him in our opponent's end step is a great way to ensure that happens. So Leyline of Anticipation and the Dulcan Ori are both fantastic ways of ensuring this happens, along with the aforementioned Emergence Zone. However, even if we do pull all this off and get Xanathar onto the battlefield, there's no guarantee one of our opponents won't try and murder him before our value train leaves the station. So cards like Fierce Guardianship for some free counter magic and protection and mana drain would be perfect. Now normally I wouldn't just say put in mana drain cause it's good, but having that amount of additional mana helps a lot when we're trying to cast multiple spells from our opponents each turn. This effect, running the more budget spell swindle, is also not a bad idea. In the same vein as this, Sword of Feast and Famine is great for essentially doubling our mana and letting us cast more of our opponent's spells in our main too. And yeah, it also makes them discard a card, again giving us more options for our animate dead targets. And finally, if you're just looking to really flex on the table, then Jace the Mind Sculptor's +2 is great for fate sealing our opponents and works very well with Xanathar. Just do be aware he will draw the hate very quickly. Not saying don't play him, just say be aware. In conclusion, Xanathar to me seems like a much fairer version of Send Triplets. Yes, your opponents get to keep whatever's in their hand, but they can't respond to whatever it is you're doing, and the ability to go through your opponent's top cards is that little bit of mystery and potential to amaze players and cause huge blowouts. Or, just end up seeing 3 lands in a row. That can also happen. But in my view, that's what makes him fun. Yes, you might occasionally whiff, but quite frankly, that little bit of variance leads to the best times and that little bit of magic and wonder, which I think Wizards are definitely trying to capture with the D&D Forgotten Realms set. And with Xanathar, I think they've definitely captured that oh so perfectly. And that will be the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. What cards would you personally put into our Xanathar EDH deck? Whatever your thoughts, let us know in the comments below. As always, if you like this type of content, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more just like it. You can also follow us on Twitter @4Commander, or if you really like the channel, you could consider becoming a patron of it yourself for access to exclusive EDH related rewards. But for now though, that'll be it from me. I've been Alex, and I will see you next time.